Hi, it's Neil Waterhouse. I received a question from Rachel Henry. She goes on to say, "Hi Neil, I've been selling on eBay for 4 years and full-time now from home from just over 1 year. My question is, exactly what is private labelling and is it something I should get involved with?" Well, great question, Rachel. And this question has come up an awful lot. Now, first of all, white labelling and private labelling in most instances these days is the same thing. And just so we're on the same page, white labelling or private labelling is basically just slapping on your own brand name onto an existing product. The phrase white label originally came from the image of a white label on a product that can be filled in with the brand name of the seller. Like, for instance, many televisions are made by the same company and the supplier of those televisions simply sticks on their own brand name. Now, the actual term or phrase white label, it can be traced back to vinyl records, where the first sample beta recordings of vinyl records had no fancy label stuck on. They just had a white label. Then later on, and before the records were marketed to the public, the fancy artwork was created, and of course, all the records sold to the public had the fancy artwork printed on them. The reason they did this, of course, was to see how popular the vinyl record was going to be before outlaying the cash for the fancy artwork. The beta versions of the records with the white labels were sent to the promotional companies, like nightclubs, DJs, radio stations, etc., to evaluate. If the feedback came back as positive, the record producer would then move to the next step of getting the artwork created, for the record. Now, this testing phase is one critical step which many beginners to the private label, forums, now unfortunately they leave it out. And first of all, I love private labelling, but as the founder and host of the 4 largest eBay and Amazon meetup groups in Australia with thousands of members, plus our own businesses, I've seen over and over what works using private labelling, but I've also seen, unfortunately, what mistakes that many people make, which cost them a lot of money and time. And almost all these mistakes are so easy to avoid. The first aspect is that it's important to realise when private labelling a product is as soon as you put your own name onto a product, you've changed the product. It's no longer an apple, it's an orange. With a new private label brand name on the product will now sell better or worse than the unbranded product. We call this, of course, the conversion ratio, and the conversion ratio of the brand name must be split tested, and it's not hard to do. A good private label name can radically increase conversion ratios. However, the wrong name kills conversion ratios. This is why it's critical to split test names. The next point is many beginners, when they get into private labelling, want to find that one elusive product that nobody else on the planet has discovered and then put their private label on it and sit back and reap the rewards for the rest of their life. The reality is, the chance of finding these elusive products is extremely hard, and if you make a mistake, you can lose many thousands of dollars. There's a much, much, much easier method that requires hardly any money, and that is to simply start with your best-selling dropship items. For instance, let's say one of your top-selling dropship items is, say, a kid's ride-on car, and the item's selling X amount of times per day. To private label this kid's ride-on car, you simply order one from your one of the ride-on cars from your local supplier, not the Chinese supplier, and slap on your private label, then re-photograph the car. You can then split test to see how well your new brand name, private label name performs against the original, and you can keep split testing to find the best private label name and design. And then when you've split tested enough and have enough data, you can then go to the manufacturer and be confident to purchase a bulk amount of, say, that kid's ride-on car with your brand name on it. Now, the absolute worst case scenario here, when you split test locally, is you choose a really bad brand name, and we wouldn't let that happen to you because there's so many ways you can improve your name before you start. And your kid's ride-on car with your private label doesn't sell. If this was to happen, you can always just peel off your private label, and as this is one of your top-selling dropship items before you private labeled it, you can simply just peel it off and sell the car off. It'll only cost you the cost of the shipping from your local non-Chinese supplier. Now, this is a much safer method than what many people have done, and that is to go and order a whole container from China and hope that their product will sell. This way it eliminates all hope. You should never be hoping for anything. Now, a big lesson which took me a long time to learn was to not put your labels on in the early days in China, as they'll just be ripped off and copied by many other Chinese manufacturers. And once you're big enough and can afford to put trademarks down all over the planet, then it's okay to get labels put on China. But until then, I highly recommend you have your private labels attached locally. And of course you can use, when we started off, we just used to get teenage kids who normally work at McDonald's to stick on the labels. Anyway, that's digressing. But bottom line is, private labeling rocks as you can dominate on eBay, Amazon, and your own website. As competitors can't steal your product, but in saying that, I highly recommend you always split test proven products first, and also be realistic with how much money you have to invest in purchasing inventory. On average, most importers need to invest around $36,000 for inventory to produce $1,000 profit per week. Now, if you do not have or are not willing to invest that kind of money, then for most people it's better to build up your capital first using other strategies like selling used items or dropshipping items. And one last thing, with private labeling, diversification is the key to everything in business, including eBay, Amazon, dropshipping, and your own website. I highly recommend don't get bogged down with trying to find that one elusive product which is going to pay off your mortgage, put your kids through university and buy half a dozen investment properties, etc. This very, very, very rarely happens with one product. If you enjoy a good night's sleep, diversification is the key, and that means build a business which has many proven products which are continuously selling over and over. That's all for this week. Please scroll down and leave me a comment below. Until next week, listen more, sell more. This is Neil Waterhouse.